The bye week is a perfect time to take a deep breath, reflect on the things that went well, and work on the things that need to be fixed. Unfortunately, this show doesn't have a bye week, so we'll be breaking down the Eagles game against the Cowboys, the Sixers' start to their season, and the Union's playoff schedule here on this week's episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Fair enough. Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. As always, I'm your host, Aiden Kaczynski, and I'm joined by a slightly new panel this week. Starting on my left, we've got a returning panelist from Riley Kavchuk. Riley, how are you?
Good.
Good. And then we've got returning panelist John Freeman, back after he was here the first episode. Now you're back in. John, how are you?
Awesome.
Good. And then we got Braden Knapp with us to talk some MLS and some other sports. Braden, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, so it was pointed out to me that we did have a bye week for 2 weeks due to studio renovations, but that's neither here or there. We're now going to go into the Eagles, who are on their bye week, but before that, they did play the Dallas Cowboys in a very, very competitive game. They won 28-23. Jalen Hurts, another great game, 17-23, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kenny Gainwell got 3 carries, 22 yards, but he did get a really clutch touchdown as well. And A.J. Brown, 7 receptions for a lot less yards than he has the last couple of weeks with only 66, but also a touchdown. So, Riley, I'm going to start with you. What was your big takeaway from this game?
That it was a tough win, but it was still a win. It was great to see some newer names get out there that hasn't been out there the past season. And I feel like it's definitely safe to say that Jalen Hurts has warmed up, and he's definitely in the game now, and he's a strong player, especially after that nerve-wracking hit into his injured knee, but he still delivered.
Yeah, and John, it was good to see Kenny Gainwell after having a fumble in the red zone last week. There was a lot of talk about whether or not he'd be used in the red zone again. Get that really long carry for that first touchdown. That really set the tone for the game.
Definitely. I'm definitely excited to see what Moore has for this offense. Definitely excited to see, how he can, team with Jalen Hurts and how this offense can go moving forward. Again, just to emphasize Riley's point, Jalen Hurts has been doing really well. I think we're starting to see playoff Jalen Hurts, and I think we'll see playoff Jalen Hurts moving forward in these games.
Yeah, so he had the rushing touchdown as well, 2 passing touchdowns. He looked really good. As Riley mentioned, there was also an injury as well. And Braden, there was an injury to Jalen Hurts that was really scary. There's an injury to Dallas Goedert that he's going to be out for 4 weeks. There's a lot of pieces that are getting hurt that it just didn't happen last year. And the Eagles are, in my opinion, they're really going to have to work on trying to move past those injuries. It's going to be really tough.
Yeah, obviously with the Dallas Goedert, that's not very good. We can thankful that it's only a 4-week injury. Observing that, I thought it was going to be more. Yeah. Thank goodness. And of course, we just have to watch with Jalen Hurts. I know he's a runner, so we have to watch out for when he runs and gets hurt. But I think for right now we'll be fine. And I just say we keep going until there's an injury that happens.
Yeah, he definitely toughed it out. And Mariota was warming up on the sidelines, and Hurts didn't even let him get a snap in. So it just shows that Hurts' mentality, he doesn't want to miss a snap. The defense struggled at certain points in this game, but they still stepped up when they had to. They were able to get 5 sacks into this game. Brandon Graham came up with 1.5 sacks and a couple clutch plays as well. Sidney Brown, 2 tackles, also a forced fumble. The Eagles' defense, they did a lot of yards. So, John, I'm going to go with you first. What was your takeaway fully of the defense?
So I definitely want to highlight Brandon Graham. 2 sacks. Those are huge, for this team. And just overall, I think he really takes pressure off the secondary on this team. And just his overall effort, is really impactful and just influential as well. He's a leader on the team as well. So that's a big takeaway, just highlighting Graham's, play overall.
Mm-hmm. And, Riley, one of the big concerns for the Eagles' defense is that they've really struggled the last 2 weeks. They allowed over 400 yards of total offense in this game. They allowed a ton of yards against Washington. What's your biggest, do you think, the weakness is for the defense right now?
I feel like the weakness is communication. I feel like there's some sort of communication that isn't being delivered fast enough. So it makes us as fans watching it, and I'm sure the coaches and the players on the sideline, nervous watching it all break down in front of them.
Yeah, and Braden, communication, it does seem to be a big issue. There's also a lot of injuries on that secondary as well, and guys have stepped up. Sidney Brown was not even supposed to be on anyone's radar to be a starter at this point in the season, and yet here he is making plays. So it is a good sign to see people stepping up when they have to.
Yeah, it's very good, and I think another issue is our secondary, and we just acquired Kevin Byard from Tennessee, which was great to see him play in his very first game. But yes, there's been some issues. I mean, CeeDee Lamb going for getting 191 yards, not acceptable. Along with communication, our secondary has got to watch it.
Yeah, definitely the secondary is going to be something to look out for. And again, with the bye week coming up, some guys that are injured are going to be coming off those injuries. So it will be very interesting to see how that all works out. But I mean, going into the bye week, the Eagles are set up for a great position. Right now, they're in first place, 8-1, best record in the NFL. They have a very solid lead over the Cowboys, who are 5-3, Commanders at 4-5, and the Giants at 2-7. Braden, when you look at the way it's set up going into the bye, I don't think anyone could have asked for anything better at this point.
No, I mean, obviously you could say, okay, we should have beat the Jets, should be undefeated, but whatever. But really within the division, I think how it is right now is how it's going to end. Maybe the Giants come over and take over Washington because Washington just got rid of two of one of their best players. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I wouldn't be too concerned with this division. I think Dallas is obviously Dallas. It'll be tough, but we'll be fine going forward.
Yeah, the trades by Washington were definitely something that were pretty interesting because it does seem like they're going more into a rebuild. The Cowboys, they're right there, John. So getting a win like this, they have one more game against the Cowboys and a really tough schedule coming up. So it was really good to get this win going into the bye for sure.
Definitely. And in this division, it's always been, the Eagles and the Cowboys. I think with the last 4 years as well. So we already know, who to watch out for, and we already know, what both teams bring to the table. So we already know what players to watch out for as well. So just keeping an eye on, the both teams' offenses as well. And I think the team that's going to do the best is the team who has the best secondary, between these two teams. And I think it's going to be the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, it will be hopefully it will be the Eagles, especially like we said with all those injuries, getting guys back. It should make the secondary much better. And Riley, the Eagles are now 3-0 in division play. They have 3 division games left, 2 against the Giants who are in last place. Again, sort of like what I said before, I think that if fans looked at the schedule beforehand, realize you're 3-0 after those games, couldn't wish for anything better.
It's great. It's great seeing it. They're 4-0 home. And going on, I think we're going to just keep expecting the same winning streak. So as they keep going, I feel like it's just more positive for us and them as a team.
Yeah, definitely the fans are getting behind them as well, which is really, really good to see. So the Eagles do have a bye this week, so no game to talk about for them. But there is some games on the NFL schedule that are going to be important for Eagles fans. First one is Lions and Chargers. Lions right now are the second best record in the NFC. Then you got 49ers versus Jaguars, which could potentially be some people's underrated Super Bowl matchup because both these teams are pretty solid, although they've gone through a couple of bad stretches recently. And then the Seahawks versus the Commanders. Obviously, the Commanders in third place, so not very good, but the Seahawks are right now tied for first place in the West. So, John, I'm going to start with you first. Which of these 3 games do you think that Eagles fans should be paying the most attention to?
Definitely Seahawks versus Commanders. I mean, the Eagles are looking to contend for a Super Bowl title. So definitely scouting the competition, if you will, and definitely seeing, where they match up on the field.
Yeah, and Riley, when you look at this 49ers versus Jaguars game, it's going to be very interesting. The 49ers haven't looked as great as they did at the beginning of the season. The Eagles still have the 49ers on their upcoming schedule. So I think that game, it could potentially be like sort of a game where if the 49ers play badly, Eagles fans and the team itself will be much more excited to play the 49ers.
Yeah, I feel like it's all about the outcome. They're both pretty similar but different on their record. So seeing the outcome will really reflect on our motivation to going forward.
Yeah, and the Eagles will not be playing the Lions this year, at least in the regular season, but it could be a potential playoff matchup. So, Braden, the Lions have a lot of great players. Jared Goff has been super underrated. They've got a great young defense. This could be a team that could be a problem for the Eagles, especially the way they're playing right now.
Oh, most definitely. The Lions have looked really good. They're a very underrated team. Not a lot of people think they're not good for some reason. Obviously, they had one hiccup during this year, but they're actually a pretty good team. And honestly, the Chargers, too, I will say, the record does not show it. They are not that bad of a football team. Obviously, different division. But honestly, I would not count out the Chargers either.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point. There is a couple AFC teams here that could be potential Super Bowl matchups. So out of the Chargers and Jaguars, which one are you paying more attention to?
Out of these 2, I would probably have to say it won't be a very popular opinion, but I'm honestly going to say the Chargers. The Chargers scare me more than the Jaguars. They have a better team, especially if they play good and their defense shows up. They're scary.
Yeah, they have a really, really good offense. If Austin Eckler can stay healthy, if they can figure out their playoff struggles that they've had recently, it could be a team that people see making it to the Super Bowl. A lot of people thought that last year, and obviously they lost to the Jaguars in a heartbreaking loss. So it will be interesting to see some of these matchups. We're now going to go to the Sixers, who in their last 3 games have been unbelievable. They beat the Raptors 114-99, beat the Suns 112-100, which again, the Suns have a great roster, so it's good to see that win. And then they absolutely smoked the Wizards 146-128, and the Wizards were held to basically 90 points going into the fourth quarter when the Sixers just benched all their players. So Riley, I'm going to start with you. This is like unbelievable the way the Sixers are playing right now.
Yes, it was a beautiful week. We're 5-1. That's awesome. I feel like Joel Embiid has really been MVP. I didn't feel that doubtful going into the Raptors game, but considering it was Nick Nurse's old team, I feel like there was like some connection there that they just let go of and played how they played. Kelly Oubre, amazing. He's definitely showing off. This past game, he didn't get a lot of minutes in, which means he didn't get a lot of points. But I feel like him and Maxey playing together it's going to be good with them.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point in the fact that Oubre didn't score a lot, and yet the Sixers still just won by like 20-some points, which in the past when one of their top 3 players struggled, the team struggled. John, when I look at this team, it seems like everyone's playing under Nick Nurse, and everyone's playing really well, and that's a really good sign this early in the season.
Definitely. The ancillaries are definitely stepping up. Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris have been phenomenal so far with their addition to the team. Starters as well. So I'm taking pressure off Embiid. There was one game, I don't know if it was the last one or the one before, where Embiid had 48, I believe. So, I mean, just taking pressure off him and knowing their roles and staying there, and really contributing, with joy and not, with an attitude like, James Harden.
Yeah, and I mean...
Sorry to name drop.
No, well, I mean, it's a good point to bring up because with Harden, it felt like that the Sixers were very one-dimensional. Right now, it seems like that everyone's getting the ball. And Joel has like a career-high in assists at this point, which is just amazing to see.
And then with Oubre, it's a second scoring option, that's consistent, and that's not just he's not just a one-dimensional player. He's a player that can score inside and out and can find his own shot as well. So definitely a player to pay attention to this season and also a player that will definitely contribute well to this team.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Kelly Oubre for me, but just to go into what his stats are, 25 points, 3 rebounds, 1 block in the win over the Suns. In the season, 18 points per game, 4.2 rebounds a game, and 0.5 assists per game. Riley, I know that he scored 20 points per game last year, but just to see what he's doing for the Sixers, I don't think many people thought that's what they were going to get when they signed him to a veteran minimum this year.
No, absolutely not. Especially during preseason, there's been a couple slip-ups with him when he was passing the ball to the Celtics during preseason. He did that a couple times. So, of course, Philly fans seeing that, they're probably definitely, curious on how he will play, but I think he definitely is showing up on them, and his defense has also been really good. He just had an amazing block. I don't think it counted, but it was still really good. It looked good, and the team looks good. So going forward, I feel like we're going to be good.
Yeah, and it's sort of an interesting idea between who is the actual third scoring option on this team. So obviously we got Embiid, Maxey first. But John, when I look at Tobias Harris and Kelly Oubre, to me it doesn't even matter which one of them is the third scoring option because both of them are just excelling right now.
Definitely. And I don't think we have to pick either one. I think, when Oubre's, doing well, when he's hot, let's utilize him. And when, Tobias Harris is doing well, when he's hot, let's utilize him. Not putting pressure on these players. I find it lots of times when you put pressure on these types of players that aren't, bona fide stars in the league, they kind of get flustered and then they become inconsistent. So just sticking with Embiid as the first option and then, relying on Tobias and Maxey and obviously all the other ancillaries as well. So when we can.
Yeah, a lot of those guys that they got, like Batum, just are playing really, really well in their first games so far, first couple of games. And then when you go to the standings, it really sticks out. The Celtics are 5-1 right now, and they have the top spot technically, but the Sixers are right up there with them, 5-1. Bucks are 4-2. They're playing a lot better. And then the rest of the East is sort of like right around 500. You got the Hawks, Pacers, Magic, all fighting for their spots. The Knicks are right around there too. So Riley, when I look at this seeding, though, this is sort of what I thought, where it'd be the Sixers, Bucks, Celtics fighting out for those top spots. And so far, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, that is what it looks like, and I feel like tonight they play the Celtics. I feel like they're gonna fight. I'm not gonna say a contender on who's gonna win because it's really anyone's game. But I feel like seeing the standings, it is pretty much what we expected. The only thing that is really a concern is if they're gonna do what they did last season, the season before, where they build up this winning mentality, then all of a sudden it just goes downhill.
Yeah, and that is something that's happened to the Sixers historically, where they have a great regular season, get into the playoffs, there's injuries that happen to Embiid, the rest of the bench guys sort of disappear. But, John, just with the coaching style of Nick Nurse and the fact that everyone's getting the ball, it doesn't feel like that this is a system that is set up to fail when one player doesn't play well.
Right. It's been team ball all season long, even though there's only been 6 games. Definitely think that this is a team that will go far. It's going to be much different than last year. I can assure you that, with Maxey at the point, and then Embiid, just being Embiid, it's going to be a totally different team. And then obviously Tobias Harris contributing with his scoring. But overall, like you said, the system that Nurse has them, and I think, every player will be able to contribute, consistently without any pressure. Everyone knows their role, and everyone's willing to fulfill their role as well. So.
Yeah, and that is something that the Sixers have struggled with when they had James Harden. It felt like that they were sort of fighting for roles. The other guy that we haven't mentioned yet who is playing really well, Paul Reed, getting a lot of consistent bench minutes, was going to be sort of a toss-up between who's the backup center between Reed and Mo Bamba. Bamba's barely played at all. So it's really good to see, in my opinion, that Paul Reed is finally getting consistent playing time.
Definitely. And I don't think, the Sixers will rely much on Mo Bamba this season. I mean, obviously, he's a player who's battled injuries in the past and, dealt with some stuff off the court. But, I think just focusing on that core group of 6, 7, or 8 guys, obviously relying on starters as much as possible. And then just moving forward, playing team basketball. So.
Yeah, and Riley, before we wrap up, the Sixers right now, like I said, have the second spot. Obviously, it's early in the season, but do you feel like that they have a really good shot of getting that top spot right now?
I do. And especially after the Suns game, too, I was a little scared going in there. They're going against KD, Devin Booker. So we didn't know what to expect if they were going to really, top them. But they've shown how they work as a team. And even the bench players, they can all work together if they have to.
Yeah, that Suns win definitely huge. And it'll be good to see this matchup they have versus the Celtics. We're now going to go into the Union, who we haven't talked about in a couple of weeks. The last time we talked about them, they were still in the regular season. They're now in the playoffs. They won a great Game 1 against the New England Revolution. Daniel Gazdag scored in the 19th minute. Andre Blake, 5 saves, only allowed 1 goal late in the second half. So, Braden, I'm going to go with you now. What was your big takeaways of this first game?
I mean, my big takeaways from this game, obviously it's a win. We want to take that. But it was 3-1, but it was not a very great win, let's put it that way. I mean, Gazdag got a PK goal in the 19th minute. Then Ure, who got a goal off of an almost own goal from the New England Revolutions. And then their next goal, Kai Wagner with a beautiful ball in to Harrell off of a free kick. So all those goals came from a mistake off the New England Revolution. Now, the New England Revolution are a very good team, and we're going to have to play very good to beat them. But it's just slightly concerning. In the last game, we did not get a goal off of just fluent gameplay, and it had to come from their mistake.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of luck involved. There was also a shot on goal that the Revolution had early that bounced off the top of the crossbar. But, John, sometimes you just need a little bit of luck and some good gameplay to come away with a win like the way that they did.
You definitely do. I'm interested to see how Daniel Gazdag and Bodea, run the midfield, how they roam, how they find the seams. I'm definitely interested to see, how they find their teammates overall. Something that I took away from the game as well as a point of emphasis, they need to continue to get shots on target consistently, and obviously, connect passes well as well. So those two things, emphasizing those two things, those are two things that they did well in their last game, but they need to do it even more in this game coming up.
Yeah, and Braden, you mentioned that Harrell got a goal. He only had 1 goal the entire season. And so for the Union, it's sort of sometimes in these playoff games, it feels like that they sometimes go away from their star players and rely on guys you wouldn't expect to come away with wins. But it seems to work for them. It worked last year. It seems to be working so far this year.
Yeah, it really is. And Harrell, who plays the outside back position, doesn't typically get goals, so it was great to see him come off of the free kick and get a goal from another defender. It was great to see that, and I think that is a big thing with the Union. They don't have to rely on their number 9 Ure to get all the goals. They have lots of great players among the team who can all find the back of the net.
Yeah, so the first round of the playoffs for the MLS is very different than the way it's been in the past. So that was Game 1, played a week and a half ago. Game 2 is coming up, and then they got a Game 3 3 days after that one, all against the Revolution. Game 3 is only if they lose the second one, and the winner of that series will play FC Cincinnati. Braden, what is your thoughts on the way that this schedule's set up? Because to me, it's a little bit ridiculous.
I mean, it is a little bit, but I mean, I'm not too concerned with it. I mean, I think in these next 2 games, we'll beat New England. And then going against Cincinnati, I'm not too scared of Cincinnati. This is a Cincinnati team who had a great regular season, really did have a good regular season, but they're not an experienced team like the Union is, even with a worse record. Union are more experienced in the playoffs with more experienced players that I think will edge them out.
Yeah, so that's a really good point because FC Cincinnati is a newer expansion team, one that did not look good a couple of years ago. And like a lot of MLS expansion teams, they played really well this year. So, John, it's sort of interesting to see that the old guard of the MLS is sort of played down a little bit, and the new guard, some of these new expansion teams have really stepped up.
Definitely. And we have to remember, like, these are playoffs, essentially. I mean, obviously they're legs, but these are playoffs. So it's a different atmosphere, you know. There are different expectations, and there are different things you have to look out for. And players are going to play differently, you know, just like in the NBA. So, again, it's just a bit different. So we'll just have to see, you know, moving forward.
Yeah, and Braden, you mentioned that you're not too scared of NC Cincinnati. There's still a lot of teams left in the playoffs. Is there any teams in the East right now that do worry you if the Union are able to get past the second round and into the semis?
Yes, honestly, I mean, the 3 teams that scare me, you have Orlando, who's the 2nd seed at the very bottom of the playoffs, who we could meet in the final. Then we also have Atlanta and Columbus, who right now their series are tied, who both won games. And I'm scared of both of them more than New England and Cincinnati. So those 3 teams really do scare me. We could have a tough time against them.
Yeah, and in the West, there is also a toss-up of a bunch of different teams as well. John, when you look over there, obviously you don't want to schedule watch too much, but there is a lot of competitive teams. And for the Union, I think because of the fact they lost last year in the championship, I'm sure they're looking at a couple of those teams as well.
Definitely, and definitely looking to see, you know, how they compete and just, you know, how they come out. You know, formations are key, you know, and they change, you know, relative to the team you're playing. But overall, I think they'll have more challenges in the East. I know Braden mentioned they're playing Orlando. Definitely a formidable team, definitely a team with a strong back line. And it's hard to get a goal against them. But overall, I think their main focus will be in the East and just, you know, trying to, you know, keep possession and obviously score. And then something I also want to mention, this team has to stay disciplined. In their last game against the Revolution, they had 15 fouls. And the Revolution only had 11 or 10. So just staying focused and disciplined overall will be key, and just being able to keep composure on and off the ball.
Yeah, even with all those flaws that they had in that first game, they still came away with a win, which is huge. Like I said, they've got another game coming up, so very good to see another Philly team in the playoffs. We're now going to go to Fast Five, and for the first time ever, we're going to do Talking Baseball with Braden Knapp.
Okay, so let's talk baseball. So obviously, the World Series is now over with the Rangers beating the Diamondbacks 4-1. And one big talking point we have during that final game was Gallen, who had 6 no-hit innings in Game 5. And when they took him out is when they would go down to lose the game, and then that would eventually lose the World Series.
Yeah, when you see Gallen pitch, it was just so – that Game 5, I know people didn't really watch it. It had one of the lowest ratings in World Series history ever. But Game 5 was just amazing because Zach Gallen dominated the first 6 innings. Yeah, he allowed a run in the 7th. Once they took him out, they lost. But it was so good to see him. Nathan Eovaldi pitched really, really well as well. So it was just good to see that great of pitching. We're now going to go to Riley with who you think the best team in the NBA is so far.
Okay, so emphasizing the word team, I am going to say the Sixers because there's not necessarily like one player that makes the team. It's all of them playing together. We also have the Denver Nuggets. They're pretty good. And the Pacers right now are surprisingly good. They just like beat the Spurs by a lot. So they're definitely up there as being one of the best teams right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good basketball being played right now. Sixers obviously up there second in the East. Technically, they're tied for first. The way the Nuggets are playing is unbelievable. Like Riley said, if a guy like Jokic is to get hurt on the Nuggets, that's their star player. And once he goes down, I don't really think they have a team around them. So I do agree right now it seems like it's the Sixers, but we'll have to see with the rest of the teams. We're now going to go back to Braden with who you think the best team left in the MLS playoffs is.
Right now in the playoffs, really emphasizing the playoffs, is Sporting Kansas City, who is an 8th seed in the Western Conference. And the reason for that is they beat the 1st seed, St. Louis, who is an expansion team. So there's something to say about that. But they won the first game 4-1 and then 2-1, so obviously they can concede, but they can score goals. So right now, they're the best team in the MLS playoffs.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see how we talked about when the Union segment, expansion teams and how they might struggle in the playoffs. St. Louis struggled in the playoffs, so it is, I think, important to see that some of these expansion teams, as great as the regular season they have, are not necessarily built for the playoffs. We're now going to go into the best baseball free agents, and there is a long list of them. Obviously, the one guy that everyone's going to be looking for is Shohei Ohtani, who's going to be leaving the Angels after he signed in 2017, never made it to the playoffs with them. So he's going to be looking for a playoff team. I think that a couple of teams that's going to be on his mind, obviously the New York Yankees, they said they're going to be spending money. He wants a big contract. It makes sense. The Mets could be sort of around, I think. It just depends where they want to go, what direction they want to go in. But there's a lot of other guys available too, especially pitchers. Sonny Gray is a guy that's 30 years old, had a great season last year, could be getting a pretty big contract. Aaron Nola is looking to get a pretty big contract as well. He's somewhere around the $30 million a year range is what he's looking for. So I don't know if the Phillies will be giving him that contract, but I'm sure some team will. Rhys Hoskins is available, Blake Snell is available, and Cody Bellinger, who had a really, really good year, was sort of an underdog for MVP at late in the year, but that was just not expected because of the way that he had played with the Dodgers at the end of his contract, went to the Cubs, just had a great year on a one-year contract, so that was really a prove-it year for him. So I think it could be, you might see him get a really, really big contract, which we could see. And now we're going to finish with John on college hoops, which is now back in season.
Definitely. So there's a new format for the Big Five Championship. So there's 6 schools, there's 3 teams, and 3 teams play in 2 pods, essentially. And so in pod 1, we have Temple, we have LaSalle, and we have Drexel. Also, we're welcoming Drexel to the Big Five as well, so it's not really the Big Five anymore. But anyway, we have in pod 2, Villanova, St. Joe's, and Penn. I'm interested to see where LaSalle, finds themselves in this tournament. Again, last night was the home opener and the season opener. Anwar Gill looked really good. Jameer Brickus looked really good. Khalil Brantley also looked really good. Just players who have, been with the team and, have been able to build relationships. All look really good. I think this team was, slept on in preseason. They were ranked, 15th, dead last. I think it was an insult. And I think, everyone who voted for them to be dead last is going to regret it. So overall, in the format, I think they'll find themselves maybe as a top 2 or 3 team. But, this format is something interesting and something we definitely have to keep our eyes on to assess LaSalle moving forward.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to see a new format shake up the Big Five. And that wraps up this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check us out on social media at X TV. Send us any thoughts, suggestions you have there. Make sure to keep watching in future weeks as well as we wrap up the first half of the season as we get close to the Christmas break. But make sure to keep watching, especially when the Eagles get back into play. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, go Birds.